And good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's doing really, really well. My name is Chris Harris. I'm the senior enrollment guy here at Capture Higher Ed, and I'd like to introduce my partner in crime, Heather Mueller, our Vice President for Enrollment Solutions. Heather, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Chris. Thanks so much for letting me come hang out with you today. Hey,
I
all. Thanks for joining us.
love it when you get to join in with us, and we've got a lot to get through today, and a lot of things to share with everybody. So let's hop right in. Talk about a little bit about today's agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about Capture, what we do, and then we're going to talk about the impact the pandemic has had on enrollment marketing, because obviously we're in a different place than we were 20 months ago. What we learned from our partners, and a lot of the research that we've done with our partners along the way. Then we'll go ahead and help you build out those 5 successful strategies for your digital presence. And then we got some key takeaways and some little nuggets of information for you to get through there. As prospective students become increasingly omni-channel in their purchasing and college search behaviors, connection with them is at the precise moment when they're interacting with your digital information is really important. So to be able to access that information or service about your campus on their mobile device at any precise moment, they need to be able to interact with your digital stuff. So as we go through today, we're going to talk about Capture's industry-leading behavioral intelligence platform and why it's so powerful. At Capture, we strive to help our partner institutions realize their recruitment goals by leveraging the industry's only behavioral intelligence platform. It helps us make data-driven decisions to help ensure that you make every interaction count with your prospective students. Our platform combines marketing automation and predictive modeling to support the entire recruitment process, from the time a student identifies themselves or you purchase their name, all the way through the time they step on your campus in the fall. This helps our partner institutions identify, convert, and enroll the right students so that you can not only increase your student enrollment, but also increase your graduation rates later on as well. Our team of industry experts accomplish this by using best-in-class marketing solutions and other services to help support your enrollment goals. So digital marketing is now the norm, and we must embrace it and do it well. So we're reaching out I cannot move today. So when we're reaching our enrollment goals, we're being great stewards of the budgets that we're given and helping our students find the right fit for them. So let's talk a little bit about what we learned through the pandemic. And it's really important that we take a step back and really think about this. We better have a strong digital plan in place that goes beyond just our websites and normal drip email campaigns. No more can we just get by with having our CRMs pushing out content on a daily basis. We need to do more. The second thing is the ability to pivot is now a priority. We really need to be able to stop what we're doing. I remember sitting on a campus back in March of 2020 when they said, we're going home, we're closing the campus, we need to continue. And by the way, you need to bring in your class for the fall. So we need to be able to pivot right away and make sure that we have all of the technology and all of our messaging together to do that. Campus visits are no longer just in person. And I think that's one thing that we've really taken away from this, is that having a web presence and having the ability to have meaningful interactions with prospective students, not only on campus when they come to visit, but to also set things up electronically so that they can visit your campus at the right time for them, and so that they get the information that they need. And then obviously digital consumption is at an all-time high. And I found this traditional versus digital media spread here, and it's about the average time spent in the US. And it shows, really we were about six hours in the digital space and then 6 hours in a traditional space like magazines and television. What they're projecting in 2022 is that it's going to be more like 8 hours of digital and about 5 hours of traditional. It's probably going to continue to grow from there. So as you go through this, you need to know that, again, digital marketing and advertising is going to become really the norm. So Heather, why don't you tell us a little about the stuff we learned from our partners?
Absolutely. Chris, it's interesting as we looked at that graph that you just displayed. It kind of feels like a no-brainer moment, right? I don't know about you. During the pandemic time, we spent a whole lot more time surfing the internet, Googling things, and spending a whole lot of time watching Netflix. I don't know about you. I found some cool series that we dove into, but here nor there, let's talk a little bit about our work with our partners, right, during this time. Obviously, when you got that call, right, to go home, to pull off campus and figure out how to recruit this class in a virtual environment and not be able to have those in-person reactions or interactions rather, it became a moment where our standard tools went away, right? For the first time for many of us, me included, in our careers as enrollment managers and as admissions professionals, as marketing professionals, where we had to shift with our partners is to work together to brainstorm quickly using information really quickly. And what we obviously know, right, in looking back over 18 to 20 months, is that digital marketing, including digital advertising and all the different channels underneath, is really critical to find appropriate uses, right, beyond just brand awareness. It's important to be able to figure out how to use all the different avenues of digital marketing to reach students and their families, not just about the fact that you exist, but how to use them to do some of the traditional in-person activities. Obviously, right, one of the impacts were the results of the pandemic and the inability to be in person for things is that we saw a lower number of test takers in the test taking pool. In fact, back in just last month, Inside Higher Ed posted an article that talked about the fact that SAT was reporting in the past year a decline of 700,000 test takers. Many of us, right, the partners that we work with, people that I talk with in the field every day, search, right, and the purchasing of names is a critical part of our recruitment strategy. Doesn't mean that it goes away. We have to be able to think about how to find students differently in an additive way. If we think about then continuing, and the conversations that we were having with our partners at that time is, okay, our test taker numbers are lower, right? So how can we use digital advertising to better find more of those students who may not be able to find a testing site today? And how do we then, instead of inviting them to campus, right, how do we engage with them in our community to be able to move them through the funnel or to create those micro conversion moments that happen naturally with our standard tools and translate that into a virtual environment? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation, Chris, and give some specific examples of cool strategies that we came up with in using different digital strategies. But in general, we had to partner together and figure out how to rethink and reframe how we're interacting, right, with our prospective students and their families. If we can't meet them at a high school, if we can't meet them at a fair, if we can't have them at home on our campus, right, how do we create those connections that are meaningful, valuable, and relevant to them in a virtual way? Which ultimately led to questions about who exactly are these students so that we can create these virtual interactions, right, that are meaningful and relevant. All of that is extremely important. And what we leveraged primarily with our partners was using digital advertising, right, using that web environment to create these micro conversion moments, these connections that otherwise we would have had at a human to human level. So I'm curious, Chris, if you'll indulge me and everyone who's participating today, we're going to post up a quick poll because I'm curious. You know, we saw an increase in investment with our partners in the digital advertising space, but I'm interested to know, as you think back over the last 18 months, how have you changed the way that you're thinking about digital advertising? Have you increased your investment in this particular area or this particular channel of spend? So if we can post up that poll, go ahead and let us know. We'll circle back to this in just a little while and reveal the results of your peers. So essentially, since 2020, right, the beginning of the pandemic, how much have you and your campus increased your budget spend on digital advertising and marketing? We have 4 different little categories there. So go ahead, pop into the poll, share that feedback. We'll continue talking. And as we wrap that poll, we'll share out some of the results that you've shared during the webinar.
Awesome. And that's a great segue in to how we talk about strategy. And as you guys are going through and finishing up the poll, I think it's important that in some areas, a lot of places were caught off guard by that. There wasn't a big strategic plan in place because really, who could plan for the pandemic? But really, we had started thinking about, and a lot of colleges were starting to dabble in some of those digital spaces, whether it would be digital advertising or social advertising and things like that. And as we put it all together, and I put together this word cloud. There is so much that's going on in the digital space that it's really hard sometimes to management. There's the day-to-day activity of creating content, everything from graphic designers and content writers. There's email managers, social media specialists, web managers, and so on. It's tough to play in this space, much less do it well when you're short-staffed and have a limited budget. And everything is in the 24-hour news cycle now today. So it's really it can be really overwhelming for a lot of times. And most colleges and universities in the small to medium-sized population, unfortunately, don't have all the resources at their fingertips on their campuses to create a really great digital experience for their students. But they're finding out that they're going to need to very soon.
Absolutely.
So as we talk,
hey, Chris, if we can hang on for 1 second,
sure.
If we can do a last call, hop in, answer that quick poll. We're going to pull that down, and we'll share the results in a little while so that we can come back into the presentation. So let's go ahead. Last call for answering into the poll. Counting it down, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's pull that poll down and let's get back into the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma and Sierra, behind the scenes on that. So, here's the results.
Here we go. Okay, about 47% changed very little, right? That's one of our biggest groups. The next up, we've got about $5,000 to $15,000 in additional spend over the last year. Excellent. All right, good to know. Thanks, gang, for participating in the poll.
So I hopefully your digital strategy was strong for those who did little or not. And but if you weren't able to increase your budget, we totally understand and I've been there. So I feel for you. So let's talk about 5 strategies for maximum impact. And as we go through this, through these slides, stuff like that, we'll really get into the meat and potatoes of it. But we're going to talk a lot about digital advertising and what that means in today's marketplace. We're going to talk about building a community, and we've talked about this before. We do it when we bring students to campus, but how do we do it electronically as well? Email done correctly, yes, we are going to talk about email and the impact of email and how well it can work for you. We're going to talk about influencers and what that can do for your digital display and also getting the message out to more people. And finally, we're going to talk about video and audio and how that really comes into play. Again, we're going to give some really great information along the way here. So hopefully you're going to take some notes and we'll take off. So, but where does digital fit in the overall scheme of things? And I think it's important, and this is a really great graph, kind of show you where we are. So when we talk about student data, we're talking about all of those areas where students identify themselves and come into your enrollment funnel, whether it's a purchase name, whether it's just through a Google search, or whether your coaches are out recruiting students, your music professors are out, or whoever it is. All of that student data is sitting someplace, probably on top of your CRM, and you are using that to reach out. What we do then is you put in your digital strategies, and those digital strategies, and we're going to go over those, but you're going to see how, through whether it's email, digital advertising, Google ads, social media ads, those kinds of things, and also dynamic content through your website. As you build out those strategies, student behavior becomes a realistic thing. You're able to measure that using our behavioral intelligence platform and really measure out what's working and what's not. You're also meeting the student where they are, when they are. So meaning when they're interacting with your digital strategies, they're able to be served dynamic content to help nudge them through the process. But it takes it a step further as well. So as your digital strategies work or they don't work, you're able to make other marketing spend decisions. So you're being better stewards of the budget that you were handed at the beginning of the year in July, when we all get that new money and we feel really excited about it. But we're also knowing that, we're halfway home, just about halfway home on this recruitment campaign for fall, and where our budget's going to be in January. This also can data inform your counselor outreach as well, making sure that your counselors are able to understand what your prospective students are doing in your digital areas. And then also it can inform your print and mail outreach as well if you need a postcard series or view books and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about digital advertising, and we're going to pop back over to Heather, who is one of our digital advertising experts. So Heather, I leave it up to you to talk about digital advertising.
Thanks, Chris. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I talk about it a lot. That is for sure. And the interesting thing that that resonated with me, right, that you were just talking about, is the notion that, and although based on our quick poll, right, vast majority of the attendees today didn't change a whole lot their budget allocation towards digital advertising or digital marketing in general since 2020. The interesting thing, as you think about that through line, right, of digital strategy to behavioral data, and then using that information to inform other strategies, right, whether it's continued digital strategy evolution, right, our people, or really expensive marketing channels like print to be able to drive your decision making in. I think that one of the things that are most important to me when I talk with folks about digital advertising incorporated into recruitment strategy is that you really need to be able to understand not only that there were clicks, but what happens after the click, right? And that's where our partners have leveraged the behavioral intelligence platform to not only understand what happens after the click, but to be responsive to that click in real time, having that digital conversation again and again with prospective students and their families when they want to have it. So that was my little soapbox for you there, Chris. Let's talk about digital advertising. There are a lot of different tools out there, right? And dependent upon what you might be leveraging on your campus, there are brand level tools, right? There are optimization tools in digital advertising. For us, and what we've deployed with our partners before, during, and after the pandemic, which I feel like are new demarcations in our world, right? Really fall into what I would consider to be recruitment advertising, right? So this is where we are attempting to bring people into the funnel for the purpose of recruitment and enrollment and move them through those funnel moments, right? Those conversions throughout the funnel. So very specific tools for a specific use. And what we found is that while our partners were using many of these tools, we could think about them a little bit differently and how to engage and move students in those micro conversion moments where we would have done that on campus or in person. So let's talk about some different tools. On that slide right there, you see the first two, right? Email targeting and household IP targeting. These are record level targeting products. So think about a vast number of search names that you have in your suspect pool. How do you communicate with them in a virtual way? Sometimes we send email, sometimes we'll send a direct mail piece, right? Some people like letters, some people like postcards, some people like doing view books, which is very expensive, but it's a thing that people do. With digital advertising, you can actually focus on those individuals and send them a particular call to action for conversion, right? Expressing interest, moving to application, ultimately with your admitted students to yield, right? And deposit and commit with enrollment. Those two differ from each other just a little bit technically. So email targeting functions in a way where as long as you have an email address associated with your prospective student record, right? We can actually follow them on the internet. The first time someone told me that, I got freaked out and I stopped touching the internet for like 3 days. And essentially what we can do is every time you log in, think about your prospective students logging in with their email address in different accounts, it leaves a breadcrumb trail. And so we can follow that breadcrumb trail and serve ads to that individual based on that trail, right? So the bare minimum that we need to know, email address. And we can design campaigns, again, for the point of converting a single person, right? Or a group of people, but individuals throughout the funnel, whether that's a funnel conversion or perhaps an invite to something, right? A lot of folks, whether you're doing your virtual events, so changing your campus visits into virtual tours, changing open house events into virtual events, using tools, whatever it may have been. Perhaps you're using Conduit and using a virtual event, through Platform Q. And so you're designing campaigns to individuals in your search or inquiry pool to bring them in to learn more about your institution, ultimately to move them to the point of application and commitment, right? Household IP targeting is another record level targeting product where instead of following that breadcrumb throughout the internets, we actually use the IP range of the home of that prospective student, right? So we're not serving to a bunch of houses on a block. We're just going to serve to Chris's house and anyone who's logged into that IP network at that home based on the street address, right? So that's a critical data point that we need. We use this tool to be able to engage the family, right? One of the major influencers and stakeholders in the college decision-making process are those that prospective student is living with, right? And so household IP targeting allows us to not only be able to communicate, right, to engage with that prospective student, but also those that are around them in their household. The next one is one of our finding products, right? So this allows us to be able to think about finding individuals in a geographic manner. So many of you probably are very familiar with the notion of geofencing, right? You draw a big circle or hexagon or whatever your favorite shape is around a particular geographic area that you want to serve ads into. And so anyone who crosses in and out of that fence during the time in which your ad campaign is running, they're going to receive an ad from you. We'll get an impression, perhaps a click. You can't really control who it is. It's just based on that location. The cool part is that with our product, with the GeoIP targeting, we can do that. And we can also go one level deeper where we can actually pinpoint buildings and serve ads to folks who are on those networks. So a couple of things that we did with our partners, and I'll tell a couple stories, right, of how we use this product. We think about transfer students, right? Think about folks who may be working, and these are strategies that we're deploying today. You're thinking about recruiting transfer students. They may or may not be back on campus. If they are, we could geofence the campus of that particular community college to do a brand awareness moment, right? An interest generation moment. Or we could actually locate the science building to be able to promote transferring into your biology program, right? So it's thinking about how to use that spend in a very targeted way that helps you with conversions and ultimately getting to the goals that you want. If we think about using it in a more broad sense, that geofencing, right? What we did a lot was, where would you have gone to visit? If you couldn't be at the high school, what's the community that high school draws from? Let's go ahead and let's serve out using the geofencing tool or the GeoIP targeting in a geofencing way to be able to generate awareness and ultimately interest to drive traffic to your website, right? For then engage within our behavioral intelligence platform to be able to receive those individuals, have that dynamic conversation digitally, and have all of that rich behavioral data for you to react to and use, right, in your recruiting process. Another one of our finding tools you'll see over on the social marketing side, this is Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, right? Whether you're thinking about traditional age students, non-traditional or graduate students, this is a great way to use this beautiful finding tool. They're in the social networks, right? I don't know about you, Chris, but I am super sophisticated when it comes to the socials. Instabook is my favorite. I tweet on them all the time, right? I recently was introduced to Reels on Instagram, and now I'm not certain I'm getting much done during the day anymore.
I totally agree with you. I'm on the Facebook gram kind of thing sometimes as well, and you get on those, you see the TikTok, right, and then you see the next, and there's this there's this dark place that I go, and my wife comes to me and she says, "What are you doing?" And like my mouth is open, I'm glazed over, and all I'm doing is flipping through
Yeah,
different. So
absolutely.
the digital age is here. It has arrived, and there's
It
no doubt.
is. It
So
is. Well, thankfully, I am not probably a prospective student candidate for many of the folks who are attending this webinar. And so what we can use are tools that allow us to design lookalike audiences within these social marketing channels, right? And serve ads to individuals that fit that. Obviously, we're designing them to look like students who have high propensity for conversion, and delivering it into channels where they're spending a significant amount of time. And then last, but certainly not least, there's retargeting, Chris. This is just a best practice in general, right? All of the other tools I've talked about are to drive traffic to your site for particular reasons. We want to make sure that when they leave, we get them to come back. And retargeting is the way that we do that, right? We used all of these in combination to be able to, one, find students, right, that we couldn't find necessarily traditionally where we would have found them in search. With our partners, we were able to use record level targeting and geo targeting to promote virtual event environments, right? Counselor engagement opportunities, things that we would have done in person. So that's a little bit about digital advertising for you.
just a little as you go through it. Thanks, Heather. I appreciate that. And I think, there's so much that's happening in the digital world, and it's going to continue to grow as we go through. But one of the things that we talk about in growing your digital world is building that community. And digital communities are being created by advocates of your campus, even if even if you're not even as part of that group. So people are talking about you online. People are visiting your website that you don't know. We're going to pop up a couple studies that I found recently. One by Kim Thornton at Louisiana Tech about the use of social media in college recruitment, and I think it's part of this building community kind of situation. So, but you have to find and listen and interact with students, influencers as well. And we're going to talk about those influencers in a second. But you got to be able to listen as you create your messaging. And one of the things we talked, and I did some research, and here's a couple different places that you can go. But yes, there is a place called Cafe Mom, Heather, and as a mom, you should probably go check out Cafe Mom. But there was a great article in there by a mom, obviously, as she talked about what it was like to drop her 18-year-old daughter off at college for the first time this past fall, and how she went through the feelings of, COVID-19, and then added bonus of, she's going off to school for the first time, and she's going to be 5 hours away from school, and all these feelings. And it got me to thinking about how, if we can listen as institutions about what our parents need to hear from about safety and security and cleanliness and things like that, you can address all of those through email to parents, through some of the audio, video, visual stuff we're going to talk about in a little while as well. But being able to identify and listen and then interact with those folks where they are is important. But you also want to create your own community with this exclusivity and added connections, and that actually adds value as well. So we all know about the Facebook groups. There's always been the Facebook group, the class of 2029 or whatever it is coming up now. So right, so thank goodness they didn't have it back when I was in school a long time ago. And but there's Facebook groups that you can have, and obviously there's other ones out there too, like Slack is building out, and Clubhouse is out there as well. And Discord as well. So where you can build out where your students get accepted. You say, hey, here's an exclusive thing because you've been accepted or you've paid your deposit. Come get some really important information about new student enrollment days, overnight visits, or meetings with professors, those kinds of things, in a pretty exclusive environment. Again, it creates value for those folks. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about the importance of email. It is very important to Gen Z. 99% of all email users are checking their inbox every day. Heather and I were talking about email before we came on live. My email is constantly running. I like to look at it as it pops up. Heather's like 2 times a day, but she probably gets 700 emails that I don't get, which is cool with me. But 54% of Gen Z still wants email to be their primary communication tool. Whether they want the tools, they want information sent to them, whether they interact with that information really depends upon how you as the institution are sending out that email. What content is inside that email, and what opportunities are you giving them within that email to interact with your digital strategies? Drip campaigns are okay, but behavioral is better. We're going to talk about that in 2 seconds here. Again, it's automated, it's triggered, it's segmented. You can do all kinds of fun stuff with email, but it also provides some one-on-one opportunities for your faculty and staff to interact with students. When we talk about behavioral email, we're talking about, from a capture perspective, 500 million email lessons learned. We studied over the last 22 or 23 months what it means to send an email. Everything from subject lines to graphics on the inside, content, those kinds of things. So we've been able to improve our deliverability rate to almost 100%. Our open rate is about 15% higher than normal open rates. And we're identifying more students hitting your website as they hit your website 7 times more than ever before, which means you are making real contact with real students and understanding their behavior behind the scenes so that you can serve them potential dynamic content. I would be remiss if I didn't say, hey, go back out to our website and check out last month's webinar. Dr. Ken Sigler and I got together and we did a whole big 45 minutes on behavioral email and why it works. Okay, so make sure you guys go back out and check that out as well. And then we talk about influencing the influencers. Okay, so you have students, other students will influence each other, but there's also other people that are out there, whether it's faculty or staff or alumni or just friends of the college that can help you. But influencers within your social media strategy can be an easy way to continue to grow your brand and push messages that are important to your success. But you have to have a plan. Just like any social media buy, having these influencers out there means that you need to have a really good plan that has measurable goals. How many hits do you want? How many messages do you want sent per month? Those kinds of things. But you have to define your social media channels. And one of the things that, and Heather and I, we say Instagram and we say Facebookgram and things like that. It's jokingly, but every time I turn around, there's a new social media channel that's out there. It is growing. It's going to continue to grow. But you have to define what social media channels that you want to work in because you have to do it well. Okay, so you can't spread yourself out amongst 25 different things. And that study that we put out there from the young lady from Louisiana really talks about that and the importance of making sure that if you're going to do it well and be concise about your messaging. You're going to have to gather your influencers. So you need to decide who on your campus is this. And the biggest thing that I would say that you should take away is don't create a persona for somebody that doesn't already have a persona out there. Okay, you can't take a faculty member who's probably your best faculty member who has never participated ever in a social media atmosphere and create a persona for them. Find people who are out there, who have followers, who is already creating positive content about your institution and use them. Create that realistic content schedule. Again, schedule everything. If you want to push for campus visits or for a special visit day or an online scholarship competition, make sure you create those schedules so that your influencers can get that information out. And then review and optimize your content. I know you guys are doing that already on your websites, but always be reviewing everything and measure everything. And that's the beauty of the platform, Heather, is how we go about measuring things.
For sure. And, I think as we think about influencers and as you are either deploying plans on your campus or thinking about developing them, it's developing some baseline metrics, right? We all have a certain number of applicants that we're working with. Do we look at having one influencer per 500 or 1,000 applicants, right? Because we want to make sure we have enough, but not too much. We need to make sure we have that production schedule. I think the important thing, and Chris, you and I have talked about this, about your experience on campus, right? When we use current students to be influencers for us, we want it to be organic, we want it to be authentic, but it has to be framed in. And so do you have a theme schedule, right? Perhaps each month is a theme that your bloggers, your posters, etc., those influencers can frame their content around to continue to reinforce the messages that you're sending in your other traditional recruitment campaigns for recruitment. So things to think about as you start setting benchmarks for yourself.
Awesome. And thanks for the add in there. I think that's important information to have. And as we go away from the influencing stuff, we all can also talk about video and audio production. And we have to talk about authenticity. And I think one of the things that's out there right now is a lot of people are using TikToks and they're using YouTube videos. And actually, one of my alma maters is actually they do a "What's Up" kind of thing, and it's the roving reporter student walking around with their camera, and they're asking the
I love
question,
it.
"What are you going to be for Halloween?" They ask 10 or 12 people and they put it together really quickly and they put it out there, and there's 500 people that like it and interact with it on a day-to-day basis because it's authentic in your messaging. So all your video and audio production stuff needs to be done in an authentic way because that's what Gen Z is expecting. You can also use your video to answer frequently asked questions. So how do I apply for scholarships? How do I move in? What size are the sheets that I need for my residence hall? Create videos. Have your students create TikTok 30-second videos on what you can do for those kinds of things. Because again, it's a place where students are consuming information. It's a great place to also continue to build your brand. And some of our partners have also created 30-second hype videos for their campuses. It's not a commercial, but it's more of a hype video with a lot of music and showing students doing things and faculty interaction. It's really great, but it's a really great way to build your brand. But the other thing too is that whenever you have a podcast or maybe you interview a faculty member, you can also take those transcripts from those productions and create blog content for your website, or you can take that information and put it in your behavioral email series as well. So again, you're reusing that same information, building that brand, building those messages again over and over, so that you're resonating with the students as they're going through this process. So it's important that you do video and audio. It all shows up on your website as well. And I think it's important that as you move through this, that you kind of combine all of these things together. And speaking of combination, Heather, how
Yeah.
does it all fit, right?
So interesting, quick story. Early in the pandemic, we brought together a series of conversations with our partners virtually, right? We can't go to campus, so let's talk. And really the whole purpose of those conversations were to have brainstorming sessions, not just with us, but with each other, right? And one of the things that I heard time and time again that they were experimenting with and were finding success in was using video differently. Typically pre-pandemic, they would be high value production pieces, right? And what they were finding is that they were able to use their cell phones and other easy ways of making real time audio and video moments, right, that were more authentic and students were reacting to it more. I think that is something that a lot of institutions have carried forward in their strategies, that yes, there's a place for those high-end production pieces, but we need to make sure that you have content for them to engage with in the manner in which they want to, right? So how does it all fit? Your campus is at the center. We have all of the different things that Chris has been walking through, right? All the different 5 areas, whether it's digital advertising, how to leverage those influencers on campus, building the community through those influencers, and then leveraging video and audio, traditional channels like email, empowering all of them with data. And this is the what happens after the click moment, right? So Chris, let's visualize for a minute what our partners, prospective students experience when we put all of these channels together to move a student from one point to ultimately an enrollment, right? That's the hope, that's the dream, that's the goal. So you can see in this graphic, and I'm not going to read it all the way through, but essentially you start to see where different channels are operating in different ways to create engagement moments for Aiden. Everything from being purchased initially as a search name, right? Receiving emails, receiving digital advertising, to be able to move Aiden from one place of interest to the next. When Aiden enters into this particular institution's web environment, engages there, again, to receive Aiden in the web environment, listen to what Aiden's interested in by watching Aiden's movement through web content, and then being responsive in a conversation with Aiden through dynamic content, continuing to layer in other channels, perhaps it's print, et cetera, to keep moving Aiden through that journey, ultimately to the point of enrollment. And each of those channels, I feel like I've been having this conversation a lot out in the field as I talk with prospective partners, is that every channel in the digital marketing arena serves a different purpose and should be used in different ways, right? There is a time for generalized messaging, a time for personalized messaging, a time for segmentation, whether it might be micro segmentation to very large segments, and deploying those strategies in different channels means different things. Ultimately, what we're able to do is do all of that with our partners to influence how Aiden moves through his or her college choice process. So if we think about what happens while Aiden's moving, right? The most important thing, we've been talking about this throughout the webinar or the capture cast, excuse me, my apologies to our marketing team, is that it is one thing to see that Aiden engaged, Aiden clicked. But if you don't understand what's happening after the click, then you are just spending money, right? So with our platform, we bring in all of these different marketing channels integrated in with our marketing automation with Engage, right? So we're able to not only receive individuals on the website, interact with them in relevant and timely ways with customized content based on behavior, but we're also able to layer predictive analytics, right? Who's most likely to apply, enroll, leverage, aid in the process to be able to understand the full view of our prospective students. What are they thinking about today and right now in the context of what they're likely to do in the future? All of that data we leverage in our marketing solution. So in those digital marketing channels, we're using that information, deploying it into the campaigns that we're running to iterate and create more meaningful interactions with students and better results for you. How do we do it? We have this team of amazing professionals that are working from everyone from our account executives, right? The folks who are laying out strategies and developing those relationships with our partners to achieve their goals, to project managers, content writers, designers, data scientists. The lift is light because our team is there and understands how to use all of these tools. So essentially, Chris, the whole point of what I'm trying to say is that you've got to be in all the channels, right?
Yep.
Engaging virtually is not going away. It's becoming now the new norm.
Yep.
You need to know what's happening after the click, right? It matters to you and it matters to the student. So I'll get off my soapbox and let you wrap this thing up.
Right. And as we wrap up, thanks, Heather. I appreciate that. And I think, as somebody who sat on the other side recently and was using the product and using the platform on a day-to-day basis, the amount of information that even at the counselor level that they were able to get to create those interactions that mean something with prospective students really drove home a lot of great enrollment for our institution. So I think it's really important that as you move forward, that you look at platforms that have this data and are able to partner with a group like us for that. So let's wrap this up with 5 of the digital marketing practices that we just kind of really talked about, but I want to drop some stuff home for you. First of all, digital marketing is now the norm, okay? We can't get away from it. It's something that's going to continue to grow, and as the digital assets continue to grow, you need to grow in that space as well. So being targeted with populations and messages in an omni-channel approach allows you to, your message to be shared across a variety of platforms. And I think that's really, really important to be able to measure what's working and what's not and exploit what's working and continue to grow in that channel is an important thing. 2, you need to build that future community digitally. So starting off, remember, we're recruiting students now who are sophomores and juniors in high school at the same time. Building that community earlier on through social media channels and creating those connections on your website for those populations will help you increase your brand awareness and also make sure that you're having meaningful connections with students and their families. 3rd, you have to be strategic, targeted, and dynamic with your email. Again, I could go on for days about the behavioral email, but the right message at the right time will have a greater impact than just a drip campaign. And I can't stress that enough. There's so much data to support that out there, but having dynamic email is really, really important to the future of enrollment management. 4, influencers are a great way to engage future students who become future alumni at the same time. It's a great way to get the message out there. It's not just coming from the marketing people, from the admissions people who are selling off their institution. It's from students, it's from faculty, it's from staff who are part of the fabric of your institution. Get them involved with it as well. And obviously, video and audio interaction can bring your campus to life. How many times have you watched a 30-second video or watched a video about a specific professor who has done some great research with a student, and you get excited about that when you were looking at school? Same kind of situation here. Allow students and their families and their parents and their influencers to interact with your campus in their own way to find out what's best for them, okay? So as we wrap up, we'll take some final questions and comments. And as always, you can visit us on any of our social media platforms. So I encourage you to go visit that. And always check out our webinars and our blogs, because we do a lot of that as well. And make sure that you join us for our next Capture Cast, which is in about 20 days or so, 24 days or so. But we're going to talk about graduate enrollment, and we're putting together a graduate enrollment series that will run over the next 3 or 4 months, in addition to our undergraduate stuff at the same time. So yes, Heather, I am committing to 2 a month coming soon. So, but we will be doing those as well. And but we want to talk really about graduate, because graduate's coming up and a new enrollment semester in the springtime's coming soon.
For sure. I'm pumped. It's good.